I don't want to fight with you, Marshall. This Jerry here has me angry. That girl and him, I don't know. But I'll tell ya, Doc, you better not goof up play with nades. Sir Ken Curtis is always recognized as Festus from Gunsmoke, the scruffy deputy with a bright mind and a kind heart. On he won over millions with his wit and down-to-earth appeal, which Mattioni of the most loved faces in westerns on TV. But like a lot often's real life wasn't like that of Hollywood stars. As relaxed as the people he played. He had his behind-the-scenes fights, grudges, and disappointments he didn't talk about for most of his life. What a lot of people didn't know that before he died, Ken finally told us the names of 5 stars he really couldn't stand. Starswell made such a big difference in his life that he held on to those feelings to the end. I'll show you around in this video. They're stunning admissions, revealing the real reasons for the fights, and Ken Curtis decided to say anything about them at last. But first, if you like Ken Curtis or classic movies, don't forget to watch Western movies. Follow our channel. Curtis Wayne Gates was Ken Curtis's real name. In the little town of on July 2, 1916, Lamar, Colorado, his childhood was nothing like the life he will subsequently have in Hollywood. In reality, it was different from most of them kids his age. Ken really grew up in his father, Dan, put him in jail. Gates was the sheriff of Bent County. As part of the work, you had to live in a little apartment directly above the county prison. Instead of playing on the front lawn, Ken's early years were like those of other kids. The playground was full of iron bars, the sound of footfall and cell phones ringing closing doors. His mom, Nellie Sneed Gates, was the cook in the jail. She didn't only cared for her family but also cooked meals for the inmates. Ken often observed her serve food through bars, which let him see a world that most kids never witnessed. It was a new kind of childhood, one that's staying with him for the remainder of his life. Ken Curtis showed signs of being an artist, young people who are good at things, especially when it came to music. But during the Great Depression, practicality often overcame dreams, and his parents pushed him to go after a stable job. Ken took their advice and signed up for to go to Colorado College to become a doctor. Ford tried to follow that road for a while. He realized, nevertheless, that medication wasn't where his heart was. He kept hearing music. After 12 years, he made the brave choice to leave medical school and follow his love of singing. It was a risky decision. America was still becoming better after the Great Depression, and with World War II on the horizon, the future felt uncertain. The future seemed uncertain with World War II coming up. Still, Ken's bet started to pay off quickly. He got his first job in the early 1940s. Huge break when he had the chance to join Amy Dorsey was the singer for the band. Dorsey was already a famous band leader, and his orchestra was one of the best, the most popular in the country. Ken joined the group not long after Frank Sinatra was gone, which was not a simple thing to do. But with his silky had a great voice and a natural theatrical presence, rapidly won over the crowd. It was changed during this time. It would shape the rest of his job. He took Dorsey's advice and dropped his birth name, Curtis Wayne Gates, and took on the name Curtis Ken. It sounded better fitting, stronger, and cleaner for the entertainment industry. His career really took off under that identity. To take form after he made a name for himself with the big band. Ken found an even better home in the circuit for his skills in playing Western music. Headed over as the lead singer of the Sons of Pioneers, a well-liked Western band with a dedicated fan base and a string of hits on the radio and in the studio. With his warmth, Ken helped make popular with his honest voice room, full of roses and other great classic songs, like Roses and Ghost Riders in the Sky, that are still closely linked to the golden time of Western music. Not many enthusiasts realized that in the late 1940s. Ken also hosted a 15-minute show that was shown on multiple stations, a radio show named Chuckwagon Jamboree, made in Los Angeles. The show went on spanning nearly 2 years and had about 131 episodes. Ken sang in every episode Western ballads, trading light-hearted contrast with a comic troupe named as the Novelty Acts, and then a hymn to end. The format, which mixed music with storytelling, hinted at the style that would later characterize his screen personality. Ken still wasn't happy with simply being a singer. His natural charm and eventually charisma opened the door to a new job in Hollywood. By the end of the 1940s and the start of the 1950s, He made the switch to performing, taking parts in movies with a Western theme. He liked musicals and cowboy movies, where he kept building the legacy that will make him famous. Curtis told the names of 5 persons in Hollywood that he didn't like at all the most. James Arnes is number 1. James Arnes was more than just the star of Gunsmoke. He was the star of the show. He played Marshall Matt for 20 years, Dylan, and how big he was, took charge of almost every scene. While people liked him, even if they were in his shadow, wasn't always simple for the other actors. Ken Curtis, who played the strange and made the legendary Festus Hagen come to life, rapidly become a fan favorite. But even though Festus was becoming more popular, he was still the second in command, always playing second fiddle to Ars's Marshall, play the violin for Ars's Marshall. People started to talk, going around, that Curtis sometimes got angry about this setup. Fans muttered that he wanted Festus to get the same praise that Dylan did, but the spotlight didn't move that much from Ars, if those feelings of anger were true or just something fans thought. One theory is no denying this: their chemistry on screen was amazing, offering people some of the most famous scenes on TV the past. Milbourne Stone is number 2. Milbourne Stone played the wise and Doc Adams, who was typically surly, was one of the actors who have been on Gunsmoke the longest, being there from the very start. From the start, he had a certain power and protectiveness of his job. Ken Curtis, on the other hand, became a member of the show years later, and by the time Heath cast had already created its own rhythm. By the time they got there, its own beat, according to what people are saying behind the scenes. Curtis and Stone didn't always agree with each other. Toc. Some people indicated they didn't agree originated from directions in the script and arguments about how long each character was on screen. People knew that both men were determined, and when two people like that fight, things get heated, are sure to fly. But these arguments never happened enough to cover up their being professional. Their interactions often came across on TV, came across as real, which may have been partly because of their extremely genuine. There are conflicts behind the cameras. 3 is John Mantley. When it came, the fight was between producer John Mantley and seemed more like facts than rumors. Real life, people knew Mantley for running a tight ship. He was tight about budgets and severe in scripts, and they often fought with actors who wished to be more imaginative. Curtis was one of those actors. Festus had become a very popular character, and Curtis thought he deserved more than just screen presence and pay that is reasonable. Reports say that Curtis and Mantley butted heads many times over this problems. Curtis wanted Festus to change to become a more important person in Dodge Chastity, but Mantley didn't always agree with that picture. This fight over one of the things that makes creativity and pace so important is few times that Curtis' complaints weren't merely said in whispers, not just stories, but real fights that people on the set noticed. 4th place goes to Amanda Blake. Amanda Miss Kitty was Blake's heart. Dodge City, a robust, ardent, and strong woman who added dimension and made the show feel warm. For a long time, she was one of the most popular stars on Gunsmoke, be admirers all throughout the world, but as time went on and Festus got older, there were rumors of conflict between Blake and Curtis started to spread. A few said that Blake wasn't happy about Curtis is becoming more and more important on the program, feeling like it pulled some taking attention away from her long-established part. Some people think that the competition was gossip that fans made up and spread, and magazines. Still, rumors of conflict at the start continued, but when you look at their scenes, it's hard not to see ethereal spark between Kitty and Festus. If there was serious tension on it, their performances never let it show, which is proof of their being professional. Number 5 is Dennis Weaver. Before Ken Curtis ever stepped atop the Gunsmoke set, Dennis Weaver had previously won over the audience as Chester Good and Marshall Dillon's first deputy. Chester's limp and his down-to-earth charisma earned him a favorite actor, and when Weaver left the show, should look for new chances. Fans wondered whether anyone could take his place. At that point, Curtis came into the scene. As Festus Hagen, comparisons between Chester at first and Festus had to be compared, and some say Curtis always had that on his mind, comparison. Weaver had moved on to his shadow stayed even after he moved on to other ventures. Fans thought Curtis might have secretly hated Weaver's legacy. Even Festus eventually made his own mark, became equally as loved as their own. If Curtis really didn't like Weaver or just felt the burden of having to live up to thing is certain, a precursor. It was hard to replace such a well-known persona, not an easy undertaking. but Curtis was able to do it. It went off without a hitch. Ken Curtis was in a number of movies. It mixed music with the Frontier Storytelling, which is a great fit for Simeone, who was good at both singing and a profound passion for cowboy sculpture. His relationship with some of the top stars in Hollywood westerns soon followed. Ken started to hang out with John a lot. Ford movies, where they typically share the screen with famous people like John Wayne. The Zenith Little Bits. He played important parts in a number of great movies and made a screen presence that stood out even next to stars as commanding like Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. While Ken's film career was already quite good, wasn't afraid to look inside. Worked on projects that weren't as well known, cheap westerns and action movies that have subsequently gained a loyal following after. He wasn't going after the largest or the most glamorous parts. He didn't do it. Instead, he looked for characters with heart, grit, and a hint of realness, but all of it would eventually be overshadowed by the role that characterized Ken Curtis for millions, Festus Hagen for others. In 1964, he became a member of the cast of Gunsmoke, one of the longest-running shows on TV programs that did the best. At that time, the series was going through a big change. Dennis Weaver played Chester Good, were gone, and the producers needed someone who may give things a new boost without making longtime followers feel left out. Ken Wast's solution. Festus was supposed to show up just once, but the crowd right away got in touch with him. His voice was scratchy, down-to-earth charm and strange humor made him unforgettable. Festus was fierce and witty, and he was faithful, never too sentimental. He became the show's main character, and Ken been in the post for 11 years. Showing up in more than 300 episodes, Ken addressed the work off-screen with same level of commitment he took to the screen. He honored the show's history and never called in a performance, even when the scripts got boring. Ken gave every scene his all, even if his schedule was tough, everything he had. A lot of actors get tired of being linked to own a character. He accepted it. He spoke a loath, was happy to be a part of something. Things meant a lot to folks. Especially he in TV was getting more popular. The glue that holds Americans together, families, but behind the camera and away from Ken's life wasn't without problems. While he wasn't in the spotlight, even though he was successful, he had to deal with heartbreak, hard decisions, and went through personal trauma that not many fans never knew about. His wife was at the center of it all, stable presence who changed his life and stood by him in ways that most people never saw. Much of Ken Curtis's career was spent portraying the attractive cowboy and loyal sidekick, but his real-life love story was not at all easy. In the background, early on, his personal life was affected by heartbreaks, the stress of living in Hollywood, and finally a love that would bring him peace for a long time, before he met Tori, the lady who would remain with him till the very end. Went through 2 marriages that ended desolately in disappointment. He married actress initially. In 1943, Lorraine Page. Ken was just starting his early steps in his singing career to Hollywood, where Lorraine had a few small roles in movies and moved in the same showbiz circles. They married young and was caught up in the fast-paced world of show industry and the uncertainty of America throughout the war. The marriage didn't endure very long. More information few, but it ended peacefully and without kids. People who knew them said their jobs lured them in different ways, and they just became farther away from each other. Ken's second marriage got more because of who he married. In 1952, he married Barbara Ford, the daughter of the famous director John Ford. To the point, Ken was already working with Ford and John Wayne on a string of successful movies from the West, joining the Ford family and fame. But also its problems. Barbara had grown up in the shadow of a strong and very demanding father. While Ken was well-liked and wasn't someone who wanted the spotlight or did well in Hollywood social circles, the marriage lasted more than 12 years. But stress of being famous, Ken's dedication Gunsmoke and Barbara's own goals eventually tore them apart. They get a divorce in 1964 without making a scene in public. Ken handled it with grace, like he did most of the time, things that are important to him. Just 2 years later, in 1966, Ken met Tori Connolly, the woman who will change his life. Unlike his previous partners, Tori wasn't part of Hollywood and had no interest in fame. She was grounded, warm, and genuine, the kind of person who could make anyone feel like family. From the beginning, she embraced Ken not just as a celebrity, but as a man, she supported his work on Gunsmoke, yet never interfered with his public image. Their love grew through everyday moments, road trips, dinners at home, shared laughter that required no audience. Although Ken and Tori never had children together, family life was still central to their home. Tori had 2 children from a previous marriage, and Ken became a devoted father figure. He loved them fully, taught by example, and created a home filled with patience and care. Over the years, Ken often described his life with Tori as one of his greatest blessings. Tori's presence brought out a softer side of Ken. The hard-working, serious man became more relaxed and at ease. She encouraged him to slow down, stay connected to the world outside Hollywood, and enjoy life. After Gunsmoke ended, she helped him stay grounded, emotionally balanced, and free from the ego struggles that plagued many of his peers. Together, Ken and Tori traveled not for work, but simply to experience life, from fishing trips to cross-country drives to small-town Western festivals. They cherished every moment together. Fans still recognized Ken wherever they went, but the attention never mattered. Tori welcomed it with grace, understanding the meaningful connection Ken had built with his audience. In their later years, the couple lived quietly away from the chaos of Hollywood. They remained devoted to each other for decades, a rare achievement in any world and especially in the entertainment industry. Yet, even in this seemingly perfect love story, life behind closed doors was never completely smooth. Ken Curtis lived life away from the spotlight, a man who rarely sought out controversy. For most of his career, he carefully avoided the noise that often swirled around Hollywood fame. Yet, even someone as grounded and private as Ken couldn't completely escape attention, and a few moments in his life would stir curiosity, sometimes for reasons he never intended. The most notable incident came in 1987. Long after Gunsmoke had ended its legendary run, CBS had announced a reunion TV movie titled Gunsmoke Returned to Dodge, bringing back James Arthas Marshall Matt Dillon. Fans naturally excited to see Ken Curtis return as Festus, the character he had played in over 300 episodes, and who had become one of the most beloved faces of the show. But when the special aired, Ken was nowhere to be seen, and fans immediately noticed. His absence sparked questions and disappointment. Was theory of falling out? Had he retired from acting, or was he too ill to appear? The effect was very simpler and yet frustrating to many. Ken has been requested to reprise his role, but the negotiations quickly went apart. Multiple sources reported that he gave what he thought at a respectfully low wage, especially for a character so crucial to the show's legacy. He refused the offer, not out of ego, but out of principle. After sacrificing almost a decade of his life, he thought he deserved more than Gunsmoke, than a pay cut for a one-time return. Some fans felt bad for them, but others didn't, sad or put down. The studio never talked about it in public, and Ken stayed still, allowing the quiet nostalgia for him. Another rumor that said Ken had a twin brother called Chester Curtis. Fan forums and online biography sometimes brought it up, usually mentioning Guy White's accounts that are unclear or not confirmed sources. However, there is no record of Ken having a twin or a brother named Chester. He came from a household that wasn't very big, and even though there has been a lot of talk about it, official papers or family statement ever backed up the story. Like it grew more from many Hollywood myths, more from imagination than fact. Maybe the most surprising part about Ken's public life included his political beliefs. Most actors of his time, especially in the Western genre, stayed away from politics altogether. Ken, on the other hand, quietly made his choices clear. He backed Barry Goldwater in 1996 for presidential election, drawn to the conservative ideas of the senator from Arizona. In 1976. Years later, he worked to get Ronald Reagan elected, going to a couple events and speaking up in favor of the former actor who became a politician in the making. This made Ken one of the few Western stars to speak out about politics, a choice that made some people admire and criticism from fans. Ken's personal life stayed mostly not public. He was married to Tori, his wife, for more than 30 years, didn't often go out in public or look for the light. She stayed out of trouble and didn't do many interviews and never used her husband's renown. She stayed warm, kind and polite to fans and people in the sector and others, quietly standing next to Ken while life went on. But even though they were calm and steady presence, life was not without its difficulties. Fame fades, health changes, relationships change throughout time. For Ken and Tori, The years that came after were hard for success on TV or public praise called protect them from when the lights went out and the scripts after the movie concluded. Real life went on, and that's where the hardest fight started. Millions of people knew Ken Curtis as the figure on screen that you could always count on. A man who was strong and dependability, but in real life, his life was terrible. I know their story. Ken was famous and got a lot of praise, but fights that no movie set could show, from health problems to personal doubts. His trip was much more difficult than the smooth Hollywood image suggested. Through it all, his wife Tori stayed always there, quietly helping him through the good times and the bad. After his extended run on Gunsmoke, and Ken Curtis gently moved away from the bright lights of TV. He didn't go away completely, but the fast pace of his early career gave way to something slower and easier. He worked on minor projects, crucial functions, and most importantly, more time with Tori, his wife, and kids' family. One of the last things he did as an actor came out in 1983 when he took a recurring role on the short-lived NBC show Yellow Rose, is a drama about a family that runs a ranch in Texas now. Even though Theken's appearance in the series didn't last long on TV, it felt like home and safe, a reminiscence of the good old days of westerns that was going away quickly. His last part in a movie came out in 1991 in the movie For Tavkoner is based on a novella by Louis L'Amour and with Sam Elliott and Catherine Ross in the lead roles. Ken played an old-timey stagecoach driver. A little part, but one that fit him well perfectly. He didn't try to change himself or follow trends. He just brought his real charm to the part, just as he always did. On April 28, 1991, Ken died in his sleep when he was 74 after having a heart attack. He was at home in Clovis, California with Tori by his side. It was a shock when he died. To a lot of people, since he had looked healthy to people. There weren't any headlines or no warnings. Simply a quiet end to a lived life on his own terms. Ken was cremated, as he wanted, and his ashes were spread out over the areas of Colorado close to the area where he was born and raised. It was a good fightin' homage to a man who had always carried the heart of the West with him. Not the genuine one, not the Hollywood one, quiet, strong, and deeply entrenched in family and religion.